The A-10 Thunderbolt II materialized from the dawn haze like a mechanical vulture, its titanium bathtub cockpit glinting against the Afghan sunrise. Below, 6 Navy SEALs pressed themselves deeper into the rocky outcrop, watching their coordinates get painted by invisible lasers. The Taliban had them surrounded in a kill box 3 clicks from the Pakistan border, and their radio chatter had gone silent 12 minutes ago. Broken arrow," whispered Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez into his headset, the distress code tasting like copper and desperation. "We are combat ineffective. Say again, combat ineffective." The response crackled through static, a voice so calm it seemed to mock their predicament. "Copy Broken Arrow. This is Raven 77, inbound your position. Stand by for close air support." Staff Sergeant Kyle Morrison spat into the dust. Great. Another Air Force desk jockey playing video games. He'd been shot twice in the past hour, Taliban rounds chewing through his ceramic plate like angry wasps. His team had been tracking a high-value target through these mountains for 36 hours straight, living on energy bars and pure adrenaline. The A-10's GAU-8 Avenger cannon was designed to destroy Soviet tanks, its 7 barrels capable of firing 70 rounds per second of depleted uranium death. But the pilot's voice belonged to someone Rodriguez had never heard before. Too young, too steady, completely unruffled by the chaos bleeding through their communications. "Raven 77, be advised," Rodriguez transmitted. "Enemy positions are danger close. Repeat, danger close to friendly forces." "Copy, danger close." The response came without hesitation. "I need you to mark your position with red smoke, enemy positions with white phosphorus if you have it." Morrison grimaced, checking his depleted supplies. They'd used their last Willie Pete grenade 20 minutes ago, and their red smoke canisters were down to 2. "This pilot's going to get us killed," he muttered to Petty Officer Jake Sullivan, who was applying pressure to a shrapnel wound in his shoulder. But something in that voice nagged at Rodriguez. There was a precision to the words, a mathematical certainty that felt familiar. He'd heard it before, somewhere in his 15-year career, in some other hellhole where American lives hung by threads measured in milliseconds. The A-10 began its approach run, engine screaming with the distinctive whine that had earned it the nickname Warthog. From their hiding spot, the SEALs could see Taliban fighters repositioning, AK-47s and RPGs tracking the aircraft's descent. The pilot was flying straight into a wall of lead, and she hadn't even asked for their tactical situation. "Raven 77, Rodriguez called urgently. "You're walking into a shitstorm down here." "I know," came the reply, and for the first time, Rodriguez detected something beneath that clinical calm, not fear but recognition. "Trust me on this one, Chief." The A-10 rolled inverted, beginning its attack dive at 300 knots. Thunder split the morning sky as the GAU-8 Avenger roared to life, sending a river of depleted uranium downrange at 4,200 feet per second. The distinctive BRRRT sound echoed off the valley walls like the voice of an angry god, and Taliban positions simply ceased to exist. Dust clouds erupted in perfect geometric patterns, each burst placed with surgical precision mere yards from friendly forces. Rodriguez watched in amazement as the pilot threaded the needle between his team's position and the enemy, her cannon runs so precise they seemed to violate the laws of physics. The A-10 banked hard left, pulling nearly 8 gs in a turn that should have been impossible at that altitude and speed. "Jesus Christ," whispered Petty Officer Sullivan, temporarily forgetting his wounded shoulder. "Who the hell is flying that thing?" The radio crackled again. "Raven 77, Winchester on 30 Mike, transitioning to rockets and bombs. Keep your heads down, gentlemen." Morrison couldn't help but grin despite their circumstances. Winchester meant the pilot had expended all cannon ammunition, over 1,000 rounds in less than 3 minutes of sustained fire. The Taliban position had been transformed into a moonscape of smoking craters and twisted metal. But the enemy wasn't finished. Rodriguez spotted muzzle flashes from a secondary position, RPGs streaking toward the circling. Raven 7-7, you've got missiles inbound from your 9 o'clock. The Warthog rolled right, chaff and flares blooming behind it like deadly fireworks. The pilot's response was steady as stone. Copy missiles, I see them. Chief, I need you to do something for me. Go ahead, Raven. When this is over, I want you to look up Operation Neptune Spear. April 28, 2011. Bird down in Abbottabad. You were there, weren't you, Chief? Rodriguez felt his blood turn to ice water. Operation Neptune Spear, the bin-laden raid. Only a handful of people knew the specific date of his involvement. Fewer still knew about the helicopter that had crashed during extraction. The classified details were buried so deep they didn't officially exist. How do you, he started, but the pilot cut him off. Because I was there too. Different call sign back then, different bird, same job getting you boys home alive. The A-10 lined up for another attack run, this time carrying a full payload of Maverick missiles and Mark 82 bombs. But Rodriguez's mind was racing backward 11 years, to a compound in Pakistan and a Night Stalker crew that had pulled his team from certain death. Impossible, Morrison breathed, having overheard the exchange. That crew was classified, Rodriguez finished. Everything about that night was classified. The Maverick missiles launched in pairs, their white contrails drawing perfect lines from aircraft to target. Each explosion was placed with mathematical precision, collapsing cave networks and eliminating escape routes. The pilot wasn't just providing close air support, she was conducting a symphony of destruction. Raven 7-7, this is Overlord. A new voice interrupted on the command frequency. Be advised, friendly QRF inbound your location, ETA 15 minutes. Negative, Overlord, the pilot responded. I've got these boys covered until extraction complete. Rodriguez keyed his radio with trembling fingers. Raven 7-7, what was your call sign, back then? The A-10 banked into a lazy circle overhead, its pilot scanning for remaining threats. When the response came, it carried 11 years of buried history. Nighthawk 2-6. And Chief, you still owe me $20 from that poker game. The radio fell silent except for the distant whine of turbofan engines. Rodriguez closed his eyes, remembering a female pilot in a dusty flight suit, counting cards in a forward operating base tent while Apache gunships thundered overhead. She'd been barely 25 then, flying the most dangerous missions with a skill that made veteran pilots shake their heads in disbelief. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Nighthawk Chin had been her name, but that pilot had died in a classified helicopter crash 6 months after Neptune Spear, her record sealed and her medals buried in some Pentagon filing cabinet. That's impossible, Sullivan whispered, his face pale beneath desert camouflage paint. Nighthawk 2-6 died in 2011. I read the after-action report. The A-10 rolled into another attack run, its Maverick missiles streaking toward the last known enemy position. Rodriguez watched the explosions bloom like deadly flowers against the mountainside, each one placed with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Reports of my death, the pilot's voice crackled through their headsets, have been greatly exaggerated. The Quick Reaction Force helicopters appeared on the horizon, their rotors beating out a rhythm of salvation. Rodriguez gathered his wounded team, preparing for extraction while the A-10 maintained its protective orbit overhead. But his mind couldn't process what he'd just learned, that one of the military's most legendary ghost pilots was alive, flying a different aircraft, still pulling American soldiers from impossible situations. As the first A-60 Black Hawk touched down in a whirlwind of dust and rotor wash, Rodriguez keyed his radio one final time. Nighthawk, how are you still alive? How are you here? The A-10 banked away toward the rising sun, its pilot's final transmission barely audible through the helicopter noise. Some stories are too classified to die, Chief. See you around. The Black Hawks lifted off with their precious cargo, 6 Navy SEALs whose lives had been saved by a pilot who officially didn't exist. Rodriguez watched the A-10 disappear into the morning haze, carrying with it secrets that would never see the light of day. But he would remember. They all would remember. The debriefing room at Bagram Air Base felt sterile under fluorescent lights, its white walls covered with operational maps and classified briefing materials. Rodriguez sat across from Colonel Patricia Hayes, the base intelligence officer, while his team recovered in the medical bay. His after-action report lay open between them, 17 pages of tactical details and enemy contact summaries. "Everything looks standard, Chief," Hayes said, her fingers drumming against the metal table. "Except for one detail. You list the close air support pilot as Raven 77, but our flight logs show no A-10 operations in that sector yesterday." Rodriguez kept his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened. "Ma'am, I know what I saw. Thunderbolt, call sign Raven 77, approximately 0630 local time. That pilot saved our lives." Hayes leaned forward, her gray eyes sharp with suspicion. "Chief, I've been running air operations in this theater for 18 months. Every aircraft, every pilot, every mission crosses my desk. There was no A-10 in your operational area." The door opened before Rodriguez could respond, admitting a figure that made the colonel stiffen to attention. Brigadier General Robert Mitchell entered wearing dress blues that bore no unit insignia, no ribbons indicating his operational history. His presence filled the room like a cold front moving through mountains. "Colonel Hayes," Mitchell's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I'll take it from here." Hayes gathered her files with visible reluctance. "Sir, the after-action report indicates." "The after-action report will reflect standard close air support provided by available assets," Mitchell interrupted. "Chief Rodriguez, you and your team performed admirably under difficult circumstances. Your commendations will be processed through appropriate channels." After Hayes departed, Mitchell settled into the vacant chair with practiced ease. His weathered face suggested decades of military service, but his eyes held secrets that went deeper than rank or protocol. "General," Rodriguez began, "about yesterday." "Yesterday," Mitchell cut him off, "you received close air support from an unspecified aircraft during a tactical emergency. The pilot demonstrated exceptional skill and knowledge of your operational requirements. End of story." Rodriguez studied the general's face, searching for some indication of recognition or acknowledgement. "Sir, with respect, that pilot knew details about Operation Neptune Spear that are still classified above my clearance level." Mitchell's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes, a momentary crack in his professional facade. "Chief, there are aspects of military operations that exist in gray areas. Programs that operate outside normal command structures for reasons of national security." "Programs like what, sir?" "Programs that recruit pilots who officially died in the line of duty. Pilots whose skills are too valuable to lose, whose knowledge of classified operations makes them security risks if they return to normal military service." Mitchell paused, letting the implications sink in. Pilots who can be deployed without congressional oversight or public scrutiny. The pieces clicked together in Rodriguez's mind like the mechanical precision of a rifle bolt sliding home. Sarah Chen hadn't died in that helicopter crash. She'd been recruited into something deeper, darker, more classified than anything he'd encountered in 15 years of special operations. "She's part of a ghost squadron," he whispered. Mitchell neither confirmed nor denied the statement. "Chief Rodriguez, you will return to your team and inform them that yesterday's events are classified at the highest levels. Any discussion of pilot identity, aircraft markings, or operational details is prohibited under the Espionage Act. Is that understood? Yes, sir. The general stood to leave, then paused at the door. Chief, that pilot saved 6 American lives yesterday using skills that took 20 years to develop. Her sacrifice, officially dying to serve her country in ways that can never be acknowledged, deserves better than curiosity. Rodriguez remained seated as Mitchell departed, staring at the after-action report that would soon disappear into classified archives. Outside the small window, F-16s taxied toward the runway in the afternoon heat, their pilots visible in their cockpits, human faces behind tinted visors. But somewhere in the classified darkness between official records and operational reality, other pilots flew aircraft that didn't officially exist, their names erased from history, but their service continuing in shadows deeper than the Pentagon's blackest programs. He thought of Sarah Chen, officially dead for 11 years but still pulling American soldiers from impossible situations. How many other ghost pilots haunted the skies over America's endless wars, their sacrifices known only to God, and a handful of generals with clearances above congressional oversight? The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like distant aircraft engines, and Rodriguez began rewriting his after-action report. Some stories were too classified to tell. Some heroes were too valuable to acknowledge. But in the margins of official history, they continued to serve. Raven 77 banked through thin mountain air, her A-10's engines whining as she climbed toward 30,000 feet. The pilot pulled back her helmet visor, revealing features that hadn't aged gracefully in 11 years of classified operations. Sarah Chen's face bore the accumulated stress of flying missions that officially never happened, saving soldiers whose gratitude could never be publicly expressed. Her hands moved across the instrument panel with mechanical precision, setting course for a forward operating base that existed on no public maps. The Thunderbolt's titanium bathtub cockpit surrounded her like armor forged from secrets and necessity, protecting both flesh and classified truth from the hostile world beyond. Control, Raven 77 inbound for recovery. She transmitted on a frequency monitored by listeners with security clearances above congressional oversight. Copy Raven 77. Pattern is clear, winds light and variable. Welcome home, Nighthawk. The old call sign still sent shivers down her spine, carrying memories of a younger pilot who'd believed in medals and recognition, before understanding that some service required deeper sacrifice, before learning that dying officially was sometimes necessary to serve effectively in the gray areas between war and peace. The base materialized from desert camouflage netting and electronic countermeasures, its runways invisible to satellite surveillance, and its operations funded through black budget allocations that congressional oversight committees would never examine. A-10s, F-16s, and modified helicopters sat in hardened shelters, their maintenance crews sworn to secrecy under penalty of treason charges. Chen touched down with the smooth precision of 20 years' experience, her aircraft rolling to a stop beside identical Thunderbolts bearing no unit markings or squadron insignia. Ground crews emerged from underground bunkers, their faces hidden behind masks that protected both identity and classified knowledge. "Another successful mission, Major?" asked her crew chief, a grizzled sergeant whose own death had been fabricated during the Iraq War. His real name was buried so deep that even he sometimes forgot it. "6 souls saved," Chen replied, removing her helmet to reveal gray-streaked hair that hadn't been regulation length since her official funeral. "The SEALs never suspected." "They never do. Ghost Squadron maintains operational security through ignorance and gratitude." The sergeant began his post-flight inspection, checking systems that were modified beyond manufacturer specifications. "Any complications?" The chief recognized my voice from Neptune's spear, had to make contact. The sergeant paused in his inspection, concern flickering across weathered features. Major, personal contact violates operational protocols if word reaches congressional oversight. It won't. Chen's voice carried absolute certainty. Rodriguez is solid. 15 years special operations, highest security clearances, absolute loyalty to his team. He understands classified operations better than most generals. She walked toward the underground briefing facility, past aircraft that existed in the gray area between official procurement and plausible deniability. The Ghost Squadron operated under executive authority dating back to presidential finding memoranda from 3 administrations. Its mission parameters classified so deeply that even National Security Council members weren't fully briefed. The operations center hummed with encrypted communications and satellite intelligence feeds, its personnel manning stations that monitored global hotspots where American interests intersected with plausible deniability requirements. Maps covered walls showing deployment zones, where Ghost pilots provided close air support to forces operating under cover of official non-involvement. Colonel Marcus Webb looked up from a tactical display showing Syrian airspace, his scarred face bearing testament to a helicopter crash that had officially killed him during the Mogadishu operation. Successful extraction, Major. 6 SEALs recovered, 0 friendly casualties, enemy position neutralized with minimal collateral damage. Chen poured coffee from a pot that never seemed to empty, its bitter taste familiar as morning prayers. Chief Rodriguez made the connection to Neptune's spear. Webb's expression darkened. Personal recognition compromises operational security. The entire program depends on maintaining Ghost status. Rodriguez won't talk. His team won't talk. They understand classified operations. Chen settled into a briefing chair that had supported her through hundreds of mission debriefs. Besides, some recognition is necessary for operational effectiveness. These soldiers need to know someone's watching their backs, even if they can't know who. Through reinforced windows, she could see other pilots preparing for missions that would never appear in official after-action reports. Men and women whose deaths had been carefully staged, whose families believed them buried in Arlington National Cemetery, whose service continued in ways that required ultimate sacrifice, not just of life, but of identity, recognition, and public acknowledgement. The Ghost Squadron existed because democracy's wars sometimes required actions that democratic oversight couldn't officially sanction. Pilots who could operate without congressional authorization, without media scrutiny, without the political constraints that limited conventional military operations. Chen thought of Rodriguez and his team, recovering in medical facilities while writing after-action reports that would sanitize yesterday's events into bureaucratic banality. They would never know that their rescuer had officially died 11 years ago, her funeral attended by family members who still mourned her loss. But in the classified darkness between official history and operational necessity, she continued flying missions that saved American lives and preserved democratic ideals through methods democracy couldn't officially acknowledge. Some service required dying to continue serving. Some pilots paid that price willingly. The gymnasium at Naval Special Warfare Group 2 echoed with the rhythmic impact of Rodriguez's fists against heavy bags, each punch driving deeper than the last. Sweat streamed down his face as he worked through combinations that had been drilled into muscle memory during 2 decades of combat training. But tonight, physical exhaustion couldn't quiet the questions burning through his mind. Morrison appeared in his peripheral vision, moving with the careful gait of someone nursing recent bullet wounds. His shoulder was wrapped in medical tape that couldn't quite hide the purple bruising spreading across his collarbone. "Can't sleep either." Morrison settled onto a weight bench, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by contemplative silence. "Keep thinking about that pilot." Rodriguez continued hammering the heavy bag, his wrapped knuckle-splitting skin that had healed from dozens of previous training sessions. What about her? The way she flew, the precision, like she could see through our eyes, knew exactly where we were positioned without any forward air controller guidance. Morrison shook his head slowly. In 15 years of special operations, I've never seen close air support that precise. Sullivan emerged from the locker room wearing civilian clothes, his wounded shoulder immobilized in a military sling. The youngest member of their team carried himself with the careful dignity of someone processing trauma through physical routine. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, "I've been thinking about what happened yesterday." "We all have," Rodriguez replied, finally stepping away from the heavy bag. His knuckles were bleeding through torn tape, but the pain felt distant compared to the classified weight pressing against his consciousness. The pilot knew details about Neptune Spear that are buried under congressional oversight, Sullivan continued. Details that only a handful of people have clearance to access. Details that died with the Night Stalker crew that went down during extraction. Rodriguez grabbed a towel, buying time while his mind sorted through classified memories and operational security requirements. General Mitchell's warnings echoed in his memory like distant artillery fire, reminders that some knowledge carried criminal liability under the Espionage Act. "Sullivan," he said carefully, "some things are classified for good reasons. But Chief, if that pilot was part of the Neptune Spear operation, if she knew details about our extraction—" Sullivan's voice carried the desperate logic of someone trying to reconcile impossible contradictions. "The official records show that entire crew died in a classified helicopter accident 6 months after the raid." Morrison stood slowly, his movement triggering a wince of pain that he immediately suppressed. What if the official records are wrong? What if some of that crew survived, got recruited into something deeper? The gymnasium fell silent except for the distant hum of ventilation systems and the muffled sounds of late-night training from adjacent facilities. Rodriguez studied his teammates' faces, seeing his own questions reflected in their expressions. "Listen to me carefully," he said finally. "What happened yesterday saved our lives. The pilot demonstrated exceptional skill and knowledge of our operational requirements. That's all any of us can officially say." "Officially," Sullivan repeated, emphasis sharp as a blade edge. "Officially." Rodriguez met each man's eyes in turn, seeing understanding pass between them like encrypted communications. "But off the record, between teammates who trust each other with their lives, I think we encountered something that operates outside normal military channels." Morrison nodded slowly. "Something classified above our clearance levels." "Something that recruits people who officially don't exist," Sullivan added quietly. Rodriguez wrapped fresh tape around his bloody knuckles, the ritual providing familiar comfort amid classified uncertainty. "Gentlemen, we serve in special operations. We understand that some missions require methods that can't be publicly acknowledged. Some programs operate in gray areas that congressional oversight can't officially examine." Through the gymnasium windows, they could see Coronado Bay stretching toward the Pacific horizon, its dark waters reflecting lights from Navy facilities that hosted training for America's most elite warriors. Somewhere in that same darkness, other facilities prepared personnel for missions that required even deeper sacrifice. "The pilot saved 6 American lives yesterday," Rodriguez continued. "Her identity, her operational status, her institutional affiliation, those details are classified above our need to know. But her service, her sacrifice, her willingness to risk her life for ours, that deserves our respect and our silence." Morrison extended his uninjured hand toward the center of their informal circle. "To ghost pilots and classified heroes." Sullivan placed his hand atop Morrison's. "To service that can't be acknowledged." Rodriguez completed the bond, his bloodied knuckles pressing against his teammates' fingers. to keeping faith with people who officially don't exist. They stood together in the gymnasium's fluorescent glare, three warriors bound by shared experience and classified knowledge, their loyalty extending beyond official channels into the gray areas where democracy's wars required ultimate sacrifice. In the darkness beyond the windows, ghost pilots prepared for missions that would never appear in congressional briefings, their service continuing in ways that required dying to continue serving. Some stories were too classified to tell, some heroes were too valuable to acknowledge. But among warriors who understood the true cost of freedom, their sacrifice would be remembered. The Pentagon's earring buzzed with early morning activity as General Mitchell navigated corridors lined with portraits of defense secretaries and joint chiefs whose decisions had shaped American military history. His destination lay deep within the classified maze of offices that existed beyond public access, where programs operated under executive authority that predated congressional oversight requirements. Mitchell's security badge granted access to areas marked only with alphanumeric designations, their purposes known only to personnel with clearances above cabinet level. The elevator descended past floors that official building plans didn't acknowledge, stopping finally at a level where even janitors required top-secret clearances and polygraph examinations. Deputy Secretary of Defense Jonathan Hawthorne looked up from classified briefing materials as Mitchell entered the secure conference room. At 62, Hawthorne bore the accumulated weight of 3 decades managing programs that couldn't officially exist, his gray hair and lined face testament to decisions that shaped global stability through methods democracy couldn't publicly sanction. General, Hawthorne gestured toward a chair at the polished conference table. I understand we have a situation with Ghost Squadron operations. Mitchell settled into military posture, his uniform bearing no ribbon indicating his involvement with classified programs. Sir, Major Chen made personal contact with Navy SEALs during yesterday's close air support mission. Chief Rodriguez recognized her voice from Operation Neptune Spear. Personal recognition compromises operational security, Hawthorne replied, his tone carrying bureaucratic precision that masked deeper concerns. The entire program depends on maintaining ghost status for personnel who officially died in the line of duty. Through reinforced windows, morning sunlight illuminated the Potomac River, its peaceful waters belying the classified complexity of decisions made daily within the Pentagon's secure facilities. Hawthorne opened a folder containing personnel files that bore no official classification markings, because programs this deep required protection beyond standard security protocols. Major Sarah Chen, he read aloud. Killed in helicopter crash, October 2011, classified circumstances related to Operation Neptune Spear follow-up operations. Family notified, funeral conducted, official record sealed under national security provisions. Mitchell remained silent, understanding that some conversations required careful navigation through classified territory, where single words could trigger congressional investigations or media exposure. Except, Hawthorne continued, Major Chen didn't die in that crash. She was recruited into Ghost Squadron under provisions of Executive Order 12333, Subsection 4, Paragraph 7, recruitment of personnel whose official deaths provide operational security for classified programs. The folder contained photographs showing Chen's progression from conventional military service through increasingly classified assignments, culminating in missions that existed only in presidential finding memoranda and executive action summaries. Her service record showed decorations that had never been publicly awarded, commendations for actions that officially never happened. Sir, Mitchell said carefully, Major Chen has served with distinction in Ghost Squadron for 11 years. Her operational effectiveness is unparalleled. Yesterday's mission resulted in 0 friendly casualties and complete tactical success. At the cost of potential exposure, Hawthorne replied. If Chief Rodriguez or his team discuss yesterday's events, they won't, sir. Rodriguez is a professional with highest security clearances and absolute loyalty to classified operations. His team understands operational security requirements. Hawthorne closed the folder, his fingers drumming against polished wood with the rhythm of deep thought. Outside the windows, morning traffic crossed Memorial Bridge, civilian commuters unconscious of the classified decisions being made miles above the Potomac's peaceful waters. General, Ghost Squadron exists because democracy's wars sometimes require actions that democratic oversight can't officially sanction. Pilots who operate without congressional authorization, without media scrutiny, without political constraints that limit conventional military operations. Mitchell nodded understanding. Yes, sir. The program has provided close air support for classified operations in 17 countries, saving hundreds of American lives without compromising official government positions on military involvement. But the program's effectiveness depends absolutely on maintaining ghost status for personnel whose official deaths provide operational security. Hawthorne leaned forward, his gray eyes sharp with bureaucratic intensity. Personal recognition threatens everything we've built. Sir, some recognition may be necessary for operational effectiveness. These soldiers need to know someone's watching their backs, even if they can't know who. Hawthorne stood and walked to the reinforced windows, studying morning sunlight on water that reflected nothing of the classified complexity surrounding them. His position required managing programs that preserved democratic ideals through methods democracy couldn't officially acknowledge, a paradox that defined American national security in the 21st century. General Mitchell, he said finally, Major Chen will continue Ghost Squadron operations under enhanced security protocols. Any future personal recognition will result in immediate program termination and personnel reassignment to classified facilities that official records can't access. Understood, sir. Because some service requires dying to continue serving. Some pilots pay that price willingly, and some secrets are too important to risk for the comfort of individual recognition. Mitchell departed through corridors that led back to official Pentagon business, carrying classified knowledge that would never appear in congressional testimony or media briefings. Behind him, Deputy Secretary Hawthorne returned to managing programs that existed in the gray areas between democratic ideals and global reality. In the classified darkness between official policy and operational necessity, Ghost pilots continued flying missions that preserved American lives and democratic freedom through sacrifice that democracy couldn't officially acknowledge. Some heroes were too valuable to recognize. Some stories were too classified to tell. But in secure conference rooms and classified briefing facilities, their service continued in ways that honored both duty and democracy's deepest contradictions. The forward operating base materialized from desert camouflage at coordinates that existed on no published maps, its runways carved from hardpan, and protected by electronic countermeasures that rendered it invisible to satellite surveillance. Chen guided her, through final approach, as afternoon heat shimmers distorted the horizon, making the classified facility appear to float between earth and sky like a mirage born of national security requirements. Ground crews emerged from underground bunkers as her Thunderbolt rolled to a stop, beside identical aircraft bearing no unit markings or squadron insignia. These men and women had also died officially, their families mourning closed caskets, while they continued serving in ways that required ultimate sacrifice of identity and recognition. Successful mission, Major? Asked Sergeant First Class David Kim, whose death had been carefully staged during the Fallujah operation. His real name was buried so deep that even his military records referred to him only by operational designations. 8 souls saved, Chen replied, removing her helmet to reveal features marked by accumulated stress of flying missions that officially never happened. Rangers caught in ambush near the Pakistani border. Taliban had them surrounded for 6 hours. Any complications? Chen paused in gathering her flight gear, memories of radio chatter playing through her mind like audio recordings from classified archives. The lieutenant called me by name, my real name, Sarah. Kim's expression tightened with concern that went beyond operational security protocols. Major, personal recognition violates. I know. Chen's voice carried 11 years of accumulated weight from serving under cover of official death. But sometimes these soldiers need to know that someone cares, even if they can't know who. The underground briefing facility buzzed with encrypted communications and intelligence feeds that monitored global hotspots where American interests intersected with plausible deniability requirements. Personnel manning classified workstations, tracked deployment zones, where ghost pilots provided close air support to forces operating under cover of official non-involvement. Colonel Webb looked up from tactical displays showing operations across 3 continents, his scarred features bearing testament to a helicopter crash that had officially ended his life during the Mogadishu operation. Difficult extraction, Major. Standard tactical emergency, Chen replied, settling into a briefing chair that had supported her through hundreds of mission debriefs. 8 Rangers pinned down by superior numbers, ammunition running low, casualties mounting, clear-cut close air support requirement. But the lieutenant recognized you. Chen poured coffee from a pot that never seemed to empty, its bitter taste familiar as morning prayers. Second Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez, Green Beret qualified, Ranger School Honor graduate, 2 previous combat deployments. Smart soldier. She remembered my voice from a forward operating base briefing 3 years ago. Webb's expression darkened with bureaucratic concern that reflected deeper institutional pressures. Major, personal recognition compromises the entire program. Ghost Squadron exists because our pilots officially died in the line of duty, their service continuing under cover of classified death. Through reinforced windows, Chen could see other pilots preparing for missions that would never appear in official after-action reports. Men and women whose families believed them buried in Arlington National Cemetery, while they continued flying in ways that preserved democratic ideals through methods democracy couldn't officially acknowledge. Colonel, she said carefully, sometimes operational effectiveness requires limited personal contact. These soldiers are fighting in classified circumstances, operating without official support, facing situations where conventional military assistance isn't politically feasible. They need to know someone's watching their backs. They need close air support, Webb corrected. They don't need to know who provides it. Chen studied satellite imagery from the morning's operation, her mind processing tactical details that would never appear in congressional briefings or media reports. 8 Rangers had been extracted alive because her A-10 had provided precision fire support in circumstances where official military involvement wasn't politically sanctioned. Sir, these soldiers are dying for missions that can't be publicly acknowledged, in countries where American military presence is officially denied. The least we can do is let them know their sacrifice matters to someone. Webb leaned back in his chair, his weathered face reflecting accumulated stress from managing operations that existed in the gray areas between democratic oversight and global necessity. Major, the Ghost Squadron operates under executive authority that predates congressional oversight requirements. Our effectiveness depends on maintaining absolute operational security. I understand, sir. Because if congressional oversight committees discover that pilots who officially died in the line of duty are still conducting combat operations, the entire program will be terminated. Not just ended, eliminated, with personnel reassigned to classified facilities that official records can't access. Chen nodded understanding, though her thoughts remained with Lieutenant Gonzalez and 7 other Rangers whose lives had been saved by missions that officially never happened. Their gratitude would never be publicly expressed, their rescue never officially acknowledged. But in the classified darkness between democratic ideals and global reality, ghost pilots continued flying missions that preserved American lives through sacrifice that democracy couldn't officially sanction. "Colonel," she said finally, "some service requires dying to continue serving. Some recognition is worth the risk." Webb studied her face for long moments, seeing 11 years of accumulated sacrifice reflected in features that bore the weight of serving under cover of official death. "Major Chen, prepare for your next deployment. And remember, the dead don't make personal attachments." Chen departed through corridors that led to pilot quarters, where officially deceased personnel prepared for missions that would preserve democratic freedom through methods democracy couldn't acknowledge. In the classified silence of underground facilities, ghost pilots honored both duty and the deepest contradictions of service that required ultimate sacrifice. Some heroes were too valuable to recognize. Some stories were too classified to tell. But in the darkness between official death and continued service, their sacrifice continued in ways that honored both democracy and its necessary secrets. The officers' club at Fort Campbell hummed with late evening conversation as Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez nursed a beer that had gone warm an hour ago. Around her, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment personnel unwound from another day of classified training, their voices carrying the easy camaraderie of warriors who trusted each other with their lives. But Gonzalez couldn't shake the memory of that morning's extraction, the precision of close air support that had seemed almost supernatural in its accuracy. The A-10 pilot's voice echoed in her mind, calm, professional, hauntingly familiar in ways that defied explanation.